Thank you for joining us today for our Domestic Violence Awareness Month speaker series. My name is Lauren Gorlick, and I am honored to be joined today by Dr. St. Bill, who is joining us for our very first webinar here in 2021. Dr. St. Bill's findings spotlight many of the root causes for intimate partner violence in the Black communities of Western New York, and this very research is fundamental for Haven House and the partnerships that we hold with other providers of domestic violence prevention and intervention services. I want to share that this presentation is being sponsored today by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of Child and Family Services. And to learn more about the work of the committee, please check out the link that I'll include in the chat feature. If you have any questions that arise during this presentation as Dr. St. Bill presents her research, please feel free to also put those in the Q&A and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors who chose to support Child and Family Services Haven House during this Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We are very grateful to each of you, as well as to our lead sponsor, Alexandria Professional. So thank you so very much. And before we begin, I do also want to share that this evening, the Peace Bridge will shine purple as we kick off Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This illumination promotes hope to both victims and survivors of domestic violence, as well as our overall Western New York community. So we encourage you to check out this along the water at sunset this evening at Broderick Park, and details for our entire Domestic Violence Awareness Month lineup, which also includes this, will be found also in our website, and I'll also include that link in the chat feature too. So I'm going to begin by sharing Dr. St. Bill's biography, and then we can get right into this presentation. Noelle St. Bill is an assistant professor at the University at Buffalo in the School of Social Work, a position she's held since 2015. She is a graduate of Howard University, a historically Black college and university. She did her postdoctoral studies at Johns Hopkins University under Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, the creator of the Danger Assessment. Dr. St. Bill conducts research on Black male-female relationships with a specific focus on intimate partner violence and sexual health and well-being. Dr. St. Bill's ultimate research goal is to develop and evaluate culturally specific preventative interventions that support strong and positive intimate relationships among Black people in America, which she believes will consequently strengthen Black families and communities at large. So with this in mind, I know our audience is ready for the presentation, as am I, and I'm very excited to hand it over to you, Dr. St. Bill.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren, appreciate it. So go ahead and share my screen here. All right. And so thank you again for this time today. I'll be talking a little bit about introduction to intimate partner violence in the Black community. So what to expect from my presentation today. Part one will be an overview of intimate partner violence, what it looks like among Black Americans, roadblocks to getting help. And part two will be voices from the community. I'll share a little bit about my research on causes of intimate partner violence in the Black community, as well as solutions to intimate partner violence in the Black community. And so I think it's important to ask the question, why even, if intimate partner violence, which I'll refer throughout my presentation as IPV, if IPV is so prevalent just in society, why specifically focus on IPV in the Black community? When we look at the statistics show that according to the 2010-2012 National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, which is also known as the NISBIS, nationally, 45% of Black women experience contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And the same survey found that 40% of Black men experience contact, sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. So we see overall disproportionately higher numbers of IPV in Black communities. Another reason to focus on IPV in Black communities is that IPV is especially severe among Black women. Homicide is one of the leading causes of death for women aged less than 44 years, and rates vary by race and ethnicity. Nearly half of female victims are killed by a current or former male intimate partner. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Black and American Indian and Alaskan Native women experience the highest rates of homicide, and over half of all homicides, 55% for women, were related to IPV. It's important to note that firearms were used in about 54% of all female homicides, and that compared to all other racial groups, Black women are most commonly killed by firearms. Black victims were significantly more likely to be killed by an acquaintance, 29% compared to 15% for white women. And also, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Black women ages 25 to 29 are 11 times more likely as white women in that age group to be murdered while pregnant or in the first year after childbirth. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why the higher rates of IPV in the Black community? And I believe it's important to approach this using an eco-phenomenological perspective. And so this perspective believes that violence that women experience at home or in the domestic sphere of life is incited, it's maintained, it's exacerbated by an array of socio-historical, institutional, community, family, and individual level conditions and experiences. So we can't just narrow it down to one variable or one factor. It's important to note when we're talking about race that Black people, we are not inherently violent. Instead, there are barriers that affect our communities, and these barriers need to be understood in order to develop effective interventions and preventions. Some of the things that we need to pay attention to and understand within this larger context is historical experiences of oppression, contemporary realities of discrimination. We've got to understand some of the customs, traditions, and practices in the Black community that can serve as barriers and strengths in the population. We have to understand intergenerational exchanges that occur in the Black community that inform knowledge, thinking, experiences, and perceived realities. We also have to be aware of factors that are associated with intimate partner violence and that are also prevalent in many Black communities, such as lack of socioeconomic opportunity, poverty, lack of access to education, unstable housing, high incarceration rates, etc. All of these play a role, and all of these are associated with, they increase your risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. They exacerbate intimate partner violence. So it's important to remember that it's not just an individual issue, but a symptom of a deeply rooted and systemic issue. And so I want to play a brief TED Talk here by Bernadine Wallace, which helps to kind of illustrate some of what I just mentioned on the previous slide.
Oops. At Whitman's, we've made shopping easy.
I think I've got to stop sharing here and share here. Okay.
Use our Whitman's app or visit us at
Can we see this okay, Lauren?
Freshest ingredients and fun. Why are African American women nearly 2.5 times more likely than white women to be murdered by their intimate partner? Why are they murdered 5 years younger than the national average? And why, in spite of all of this, are they more likely to remain with their abusive partner? What's really going on? I started researching intimate partner violence a few years ago, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why African American women experience the poorest outcomes. There are systems in place. The police, shelters, emergency rooms, and community practitioners are all available. Why are these women not seeking the help that they need? And at what cost? It wasn't until I began sorting this out with my dissertation advisor that I wondered, how much of me is getting in the way? I'm not talking about me, the student, the professor, or even me, the college administrator, but me, the African American woman. When you look at me, that's probably the first thing that you notice, is that I am an African American woman. But what exactly does that mean? Well, first of all, African American women are smart, strong, and very resilient. We take pride in the fact that we're the glue that keeps our families together. We protect our men and our children. We're taught to fight back and to look out for yourself, because after all, no one else is going to look out for you. We're also told to never let them see you sweat. And no matter what happens, you've got this. You have got everything under control. But what happens if I'm being abused? I may not have everything under control. I'm already in a double jeopardy because it's my role to protect my man from the man. So I may not readily call the police. But if I do call the police, it's because I really need them for protection, advice, and to rescue me. Only when they arrive, they're confused. Because my abuser is probably as bruised, battered, and bloodied as I am, they're left trying to figure out who's the victim and who's the perpetrator. And because I've never been allowed to be vulnerable and may already be depressed, when the officer asks what happened, I may yell at him, "He hit me and I hit him back," which was the wrong thing to do and say, because that plays right into the societal stereotype of the angry Black woman. And chances are, the officer doesn't understand the nuances of my culture. So he misinterprets my depression for disrespect. So instead of getting a referral to the emergency shelter system, which is what I really need, I'm slapped with a dual order of protection right along with my abusive partner, maybe even carted off to jail. If I make it into the emergency shelter system, my experiences are similar. My fear and frustration are misinterpreted as hostility, and that could very well land me without securing the services that I need to safely leave. The emergency shelter system is designed to help me right-size my life. Only I feel like an outsider. Small items that would help me restore my sense of self, like basic hair products or even foods that I enjoy, they're not there. Then there's the healthcare system. People who could actually help me ignore my disfigured face, neglect to ask how I lost consciousness, about my morbid obesity, or why this is the 7th time that they have treated me within the last 12 months. And because I'm very religious, I'm going to turn to my church to seek counsel. Only not all members of clergy are trained to fully support me. At best, I'm encouraged to leave. But at worst, which happens more oftentimes than not, I'm encouraged to cope, even remain with my abusive partner. Because after all, it is my job to keep my family together at all costs, even if that cost is my life. And you know what? It's killing me. You see me as an angry Black woman, and it's killing me. The police misinterpret my depression for disrespect, and it's killing me. Shelter workers misunderstand my fear and frustration, and it's killing me. Emergency room physicians are not asking the critical questions, and it's killing me. My pastor expects me to keep my family together at all costs, and it's killing me. But what if we stop the killing? What if we flip the script and offered help right from the start? What if you didn't see me as an angry Black woman, a superwoman who's got this, or even as a sassy, back-talking sapphire? Can you imagine? Can you imagine how much we can improve the outcomes of African American women who are victims of intimate partner violence if you just saw me as me, a real person who is scared, depressed, and desperate, and not through the stereotypical lenses? What if I called the police and they actually saw me as a vulnerable woman who really needed their protection? What if I could find shelter in the shelter system? A place where I was valued, understood, and fully supported. What if emergency room physicians actually asked how I sustained my injuries and whether they were the result of intimate partner violence? What if my pastor preached about God's hatred of abuse as much as he preached against divorce? African American women who are victims of intimate partner violence have the same supports available to them as women of other racial ethnic groups. But do we really? Are we really fully supported by the police, the shelter system, emergency room physicians, and community practitioners? Perhaps I would leave if there were supports that were available and people who actually understood and valued me for me. So why not? Why not fight through the underlying biases to hear what I haven't told you? Why not struggle to see the hurt, the pain, and scars that I haven't shown you? Why not ask the critical questions? I am more likely to disclose that I'm a victim of intimate partner violence and even leave my abusive partner if you just ask whether I'm being abused. To my sisters, it is okay to be vulnerable, even as vulnerable as white women are allowed to be. You don't have to have everything together all of the time. Police, see my aggression as a sign that things are spiraling out of control. I'm actually trying to tell you that I need your help, not push you away. Shelter workers, you can go home, but this temporary shelter is my home. So make sure it is a safe, inviting, and respectful place for me to unset and rewind. Emergency room physicians, My obesity and my blood pressure are signs that I'm collapsing under the stress of it all. Offer me more than a blood pressure pill. Pastors, you are not the expert on this, and we don't expect you to be. So connect us with real resources in the community and people who could really and fully support me. Because when it comes to intimate partner violence, I need to do a little bit more than pray about it. I think this is an idea worth sharing. Our words do not have to be the walls that keep us as African American women from getting the help that we need to safely leave our abusive partner. If you could just stop, ask, think, and really listen, together, we can save lives. And even if it's just one life, I think it's worth it. What about you?
All right, so some of the roadblocks that Bernadine Wangler mentioned, and there's some more listed here, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but just thinking about the roadblocks for Black victims, survivors of intimate partner violence that they face when seeking help. And so thinking about the connectedness, the ties to the criminal justice system, responses being one of the only options of addressing intimate partner violence. I'm thinking about some of the penalties if you're coping through alcohol or other drug use. Thinking about a lack of access to services in their community. If we have violence or we have organizations that are not located in the community and you have to drive outside of your community, already shows the message that this was not created for you. Thinking of issues that are experienced by Black immigrants, such as language access, being concerned with immigration status, and then just thinking overall of the influence of the family of origin and the community and the knowledge or lack of knowledge around intimate partner violence. And so we've got to ask ourselves, how do we effectively help address IPV in the Black community? And I think it needs to start with culturally specific interventions, interventions designed with the Black community in mind. And how do we do this? We need to start with the voices of the community. And so that is what I did with my research. My recent study assessed the perspectives of Black nursing students from high-risk IPV, predominantly Black communities in Western New York on the causes and solutions to IPV in the Black community. The exact questions the study sought to answer was, what explanations do residents of high-risk IPV communities give for IPV in their communities? And then what solutions do residents of high-risk IPV communities give for addressing IPV? And so the methods that were used was semi-structured interviews, doing 4 focus groups ranging in size from 2 to 7 participants per focus group, giving us a sample size of 22. These focus groups were conducted with Black students enrolled in a licensed practitioner nursing program at a local community organization located in a predominantly Black community in Western New York. There was an overall 73% response rate. 22 out of 30 students enrolled in the LPN program participated in the study, and 2 participants were excluded due to not living in high-risk IPV zip codes. 3 focus groups included women only, 1 included only men. Important to note that the decision to sample Black LPN students was based on convenience, as we aim to include Black residents from high IPV risk communities, and this was a great way to do it. All focus groups were conducted at the community organization where the LPN classes were held, And interviews lasted anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes. Probably could have went longer because participants wanted to talk and talk and talk and really share their stories. In addition, participants completed a brief social demographic and IPV questionnaire. During the focus group sessions, 2 social workers practicing in the field of IPV were present at each session and available to participants if they were triggered throughout. During the discussion, nobody mentioned that they were triggered or that they needed to speak with a social worker, and we did continue to check in to make sure. And we also checked in at the end of the focus groups. Participants received a $25 gift card to a store of their choice: Walmart, Target, local grocery store, gas station. And then all interviews were audio recorded and transcribed verbatim, giving us the opportunity to listen to them over and over again, as long as continue to read through the transcripts to try to pull out some of the key themes that were consistent across interviews. And so for data analysis, an inductive thematic analysis, which is a process of identifying what are the patterns across the focus groups, and what are they saying about the issue? What are participants saying are the causes of IPV in their community, and what are they saying are the solutions? And so looking at the results, there were 22 Black LPN students residing in high-risk IPV communities that were included. 91% identified as heterosexual women. 82% reported an annual income of less than $20,000 per year. 82% reported having children. The average age of participants was 40. 59% of participants reported experiencing abuse, and 45% reported perpetrating abuse. Some who indicated that they perpetrated abuse also indicated that it was done in self-defense. And so looking at the themes that came up to that first question, causes of IPV in the Black community, we have 5 themes that emerged. Weakened family structure, IPV is normalized, the community lacks knowledge of IPV, there's a mistrust of formal resources, and mental health. And so looking at the first theme, weakened family structure, participants felt that a primary cause of IPV in their communities is a weakened family structure that was caused by structural racism, which resulted in missing fathers in Black communities and men and women forming unhealthy relationships. And so I've got 2 sample quotes here. One participant said, I am 22 years old, and I know that she's referring to relationship toxicity, stems from my real dad and me literally acting like I got this vendetta against him for leaving and all this. I think, oh, you got another family, but I ain't there. All my relationships, excuse my tears, y'all, but my relationships, it's like, you gonna leave and you gonna leave too. I'm just gonna be mean to you and you and you, because y'all all gonna leave and end up leaving. I think it really comes from him, referring to her dad. He's the biggest reason why I can't be in a healthy relationship, because I don't know how. Another participant was describing her mom and how her mom had finally left her abusive partner. And she says that everybody was happy. I could see big changes from the first couple months. It wasn't even a year that went by, and the man has the address. All my sisters was like, yo, I hate mom. And it just breaks my heart because I don't even want to hate my mom. I make a conscious decision not to hate her, because if I love with my heart and not my head, I would. And I think that was probably one of the most interesting findings to me in this study, is how much participants talked about and struggled with the feelings they had toward their mom for staying in the relationships. And so it wasn't too surprising. I've seen in other studies, you know, the attitudes toward attitudes either about missing fathers and how that impacts relationships. And so just seeing the overall attitudes toward mom that emerged in this study was extremely interesting. The second theme, IPV is normalized. And so participants expressed that feeling that weakened family structures led to the normalization of IPV in Black communities. And so some example quotes from participants. These things are just accepted by the community because it's so rampant. You see it so much that, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be seeing or listening to or looking at or anything of that nature. Another participant said, I think the children are affected the most because they are vulnerable. I think they see dysfunction as being the norm. When it's time for them to start their family, they may think that this is the way to treat their partner. Another participant said, I know the things I seen growing up, I thought was normal. It isn't until you get older that you realize it isn't. I look back on it and I didn't realize how much it affected me in school and in dealing with people. Third theme that emerged of causes of IPV is lack of IPV knowledge in community. And participants felt that because IPV is normalized in many communities, yet rarely discussed, the community lacks knowledge about what constitutes IPV and how to respond or intervene. And so one participant said, I say to myself, I would never do this. I will never hit anybody. I would never abuse my partner. But I didn't even know that what I was doing, the action of me grabbing my partner's wrist and snatching my keys out of their hands, is abuse. You have to realize that because it progresses, it happens little by little. Another participant said, is describing an incident that happened when she was on the phone with a friend, and she said, my friend was laughing like it was funny. And my friend was like, why did it happen? When I tell you my partner beat me up with my friend listening to it on the phone. And after that, I've never fucked with my friend after that, because the whole time my friend is laughing and wasn't really aware of what was going on. And so it's really speaking to that spot of not having that awareness about IPV and not even knowing how to respond or intervene. A mistrust of formal resources. And so many Black LPN students residing in high-risk IPV communities identified a mistrust of formal resources based on their previous experiences. And this is similar to what was described in the TED Talk by Bernadine Waller. And so one participant says, they say call the police, but I feel like the police don't come in time. So I called 911 and they would take forever to come. It got to the point I used to have to lie and say he had a gun for them to hurry up and come before it escalated and they come after the fight happened. Now he disappeared and they act like they're looking for him. They arrest him and then they let him out the next day and he breaks back into my house. The police don't really care. Another participant said, I had went to get checked, and this is a participant who was pregnant at the time. And so she said, I had went to get checked and I was bleeding. I had a cesarean birth, so I'm not supposed to have blood. They had to instantly take her from my stomach. Here I am, I'm sitting in blood. I'm having my baby with scratches on my face. It's just like, even if I'm lying to these people, like I'm telling them I'm okay, but you can't see that I'm not. You can't really see that I'm not okay. And so speaking back to what Bernadine Waller was saying in terms of healthcare and healthcare professionals, not asking the right questions, not asking any questions. Mental health challenges as a result of living in stressful, low-income environments was identified by Black LPN students residing in high-risk IPV communities as a predominant force in the perpetuation of IPV in Black communities. Many felt that just being Black in America means you have mental health issues, which actually echoes a quote by James Baldwin, who says something to the extent of, to be Black and even a little bit conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And so many participants felt that many in their community have not learned how to cope with living in oppressive and marginalized environments. And so one participant talked about her partner and how she started to see this change in him when his best friend was killed. And so when his best friend passed away, he took it really hard, and I noticed him shifting attitude-wise. And so really speaking to that inability to cope with the loss of a loved one. The participants repeated over and over and over and over again, hurt people, hurt people. And then another quote, a lot of it's connected to drug abuse. I know a lot of drug addicts that are really good people, but if they're high, they're a different person. The effects of them being on drugs makes them violent. And so moving from causes to solutions to IPV in Black communities. And so participants came up with 10 solutions, from counseling to peer support groups, use of technology, resources to create self-sufficiency, education, culturally specific resources, reducing stigma in Black communities, reaching people through public service announcements, substance abuse treatment, and IPV screenings. And so with regards to counseling, participants felt that the victims, survivors, children, and perpetrators need counseling to either cope, heal, and address IPV, or to deal with other hardships in life that may make one more vulnerable to IPV. So such as addressing substance abuse, death of loved ones, child neglect, childhood trauma. And so 2 quotes, one participant said, "I think when a person gets arrested, they should be put in counseling, and the victim in counseling too, just to have somebody to talk to." Another quote, "I think abusers need counseling early on. 9 out of 10 times, they were abused." Peer support groups, or a place for people to share their experiences with one another without judgment, was identified as a solution to IPV. And so, as I said, most interviews range from 90 to 120 minutes, and they could have went longer than that because participants were just happy to have an outlet to talk about this experience. Many of them have sat next to each other in this LPN program for months. What they failed to realize is that many of them had a similar experience around IPV. And so just having this opportunity to share and to talk and have their voices heard and to share their stories and to see where they connected, they welcomed this opportunity. And so this quote said, "We just need groups like these where we can tell our story. We can tell our story and hear what other people are going through." You're like, "Oh yeah, I was just doing that a couple days ago." And it puts you in a better place mentally. "Oh, that's why I was feeling like that." Nope, I wasn't tripping. What he did was disrespectful. Groups like these are needed because we get things mixed up when we're intimate with somebody. Use of technology. Participants felt that technology could be an extremely useful IPV intervention. So technological solutions included online peer support groups and forums, YouTube channels, tech services. And so a quote from a participant, "Sometimes people feel more comfortable being able to send something to somebody they can't see. They want advice. If you guys," talking to the focus group facilitators, "got a YouTube channel established, then you could have guests. Then you could bring out these resources through that channel and stuff like that. Then it also lets people use it at their own discretion too. Then it doesn't seem like a waste of time." And they talked a lot about the importance of use of technology because the community also it's a small community and everybody knows everybody. And so to some extent, especially for those who wanted to protect their identity, but still, log in and learn, they thought technology would be a great resource. Resources to create self-sufficiency for IPV victims, IPV education, and culturally specific services were interrelated concepts that were identified as solutions to IPV. And so Black LPN students residing in high-risk IPV communities felt that the victims of IPV needed more opportunities to get on their feet. Participants felt that IPV education by all was greatly needed in order to strengthen families and to start changing those community norms. They felt IPV education should start at an early age and go across ages. They felt many men and boys in their communities needed masculinity education, and that everyone in their communities needed healthy relationship education. And they echoed over and over and over again, we would love to have a healthy relationship. We don't know what it looks like. Community forums on IPV held on a regular basis that consisted of poetry, dancing, singing, were identified as great ways to educate the community. IPV resources are created for them, white women, designed by them, and it fits a certain criteria. Just look at all the domestic violence pictures and photos. You have to look like you're deserving. You got to be the helpless victim. You didn't fight back. You didn't do this or that. Okay, you can come into our shelter. That doesn't apply to Black women. And so there's a lot of consensus that the services that are available, they are not created with us in mind. And then the last quote for this theme is, I think public service announcements should literally be somebody hitting somebody with the question, do you want this for your daughter, your mom, blah, blah, blah. People react visually as opposed to hearing it on the radio or something of that nature. And then lastly, participants expressed that substance abuse treatment and IPV screenings are needed to decrease IPV. And so 2 quotes here, maybe a drug clinic or something. There are more than enough people that are on drugs who have been abused or are abusers. Like I said, my dad was going to it for a long time. One participant suggested that screening for IPV should start in pediatricians' offices with just asking young kids, do you know what a healthy relationship is like? So in conclusion, Blacks experience disproportionate and more severe rates of IPV compared to other racial groups. And remember that eco-phenomenological perspective helps us to understand why. So the primary reasons for this increased vulnerability to IPV is found in systemic racism and oppression, resulting in policies and practices which marginalize this group and increases adversity for Black families. Mainstream interventions to address IPV among Blacks are often ineffective as they do not consider the oppressive and marginalized context of the Black community. And culturally specific IPV interventions for the Black community must be created in partnership with the Black community.
Dr. St. Phil, thank you so much for presenting this work to us. It's such an insightful tool to have you in our community sharing this documentation, this work that you've been doing. Thank you so much. I'll take a moment to allow our audience members to type in any questions in the Q&A box. I don't see anything right now, but please feel free to do so if you want Dr. St. Phil to address something on this topic. In the meantime, though, a couple of questions came to me before we began today, and you mentioned it a little bit towards the end, and just thinking about healthy versus unhealthy relationships. Did any of the participants go into a little more depth about what it could look like in a school, a curriculum, something like that for our youth to learn more about healthy versus unhealthy relationships and the effects of IPV?
So they didn't talk about what it would look like more in a school setting. They really went on and were very descriptive of what it would look like in a community setting. And I think part of that was being where the interviews took place was a community center. And so I think participants were really kind of honing in on what this would look like. Like, this is a great place, a great location. The community knows where it's located. People come in and out of this community center for a variety of reasons. It's accessible to everyone in the community, men, women, children, across age groups. And so they were really brainstorming on how could we use this building that already draws a variety of people within the community to educate the community on this topic. And so that's when they really started getting excited with thinking about, possible poetry nights in the community, or just having community, events and making it fun. They emphasized over and over and over that you saw counseling recommended for mental health, but they wanted opportunities to learn about this and educate the community outside of just counseling. And so you saw that passion and excitement really come through, thinking about what could be done in the community center, and then what could be done also through technology and online for those who didn't want to come out and get involved with things in the community, or who wanted to kind of get more assistance with their situation, but kind of stay discreet so that others in the community would not know what was going on.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I'd be curious to learn, maybe you don't have this data right now, but in the future, if any of your participants have gotten involved in developing something, them taking charge, like you said, that would be fascinating to see that continue.
Absolutely.
Couple questions that did come in. This one is from Adrian. Would you say that IPV is so high in the Black community for fear the abusive partner might be killed if the police are called, when all they want to be is rescued? Could you touch upon that?
I think that's a part of it, and I'll go back to the eco-phenomenological perspective, and I won't say that it's the only part, it's the only variable, but that's absolutely a part of it, is that many feel like their only response to getting the assistance that they need is to call the police. And so recognizing already the mistrust within the Black community, wondering, and as Bernadine Waller was saying in her video, kind of that need to protect. So absolutely, what's going to happen if I call the police? Is my situation going to get even worse? Is something going to happen to my perpetrator? Is something going to happen to me? Black women are more likely, when we call the police for experiencing abuse, to get our children taken away, to experience dual arrest. And so we're at risk for calling the police. So yes, perpetrator could be killed. I could be arrested. My kids could go to social services. And so kind of thinking about all of this, thinking about past experiences, I tried that route and, it didn't work out for me. And so I think all of this is a factor. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We think about it a lot here at Haven House, the questions that come up in the lives of our survivors. Why didn't you just leave him? Why are you still staying with him? What took you so long? Not that these are questions we're asking, but that our survivors are experiencing from their friends, loved ones, their community. And you have to think about it before you make that call. All of those factors you just mentioned are running through your head, running through your mind. You don't want to become you might not want to become a single parent at this point. It's going to be tough for you to survive, maybe even find a job. There's so much into it, like you addressed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This question comes from Elena. She says, as someone who personally supports prison abolition, how would one handle domestic violence in a post-incarceral society? Can you touch upon that?
And I think that's where we are right now, right? And so that's really what we're trying to think more about and trying to figure out what that would look like. And so there's been a lot of talk, of course, with restorative justice and thinking through what would that look like, and having more of that as an option, opportunity. I know I'm part of UGMA, the National Center Domestic Violence in the Black Community, and their evaluation work group. And this was one of the conversations that we were recently having, is really the need to kind of brainstorm more of what would this look like, even beyond just restorative justice. And so I think right now we talk a lot about having these opportunities for those who want it, if we can do it in a safe environment, etc., to do restorative justice. But I think that's something that I don't really have the answer for at this point. It's something that definitely needs to be explored more by everybody that's doing this work.
Absolutely. I'm not seeing any other questions come through. So folks, if you do have any more, please feel free to type them in. In the meantime, too, I thought maybe Dr. St. Vil, if there was a moment where you or those who were interviewing the participants really stood out to you, would love to hear about what that moment was like and what that helped carry through in your research too.
I wouldn't say it was one moment. I would just say it's the entire experience. I look at my role as a researcher and why I got into this really is to be the voice and uplift the voices of those who don't have a seat at certain tables, and to be a voice for the community. And so I think more so than anything else, I was just honored and privileged that they would open up in the way that they did to share their experiences, not knowing me, seeing me walk into the room for the first time, getting real, getting emotional, crying, not holding back. I mean, I think that's the most, for me, that's my takeaway. And that's what, like, anytime I'm presenting, anytime I'm writing articles, anytime, I really want to make sure that I'm doing justice to their voices and to their experiences.
Absolutely. Right. It's incredible work.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I don't see any more questions coming through, but please feel free to continue to reach out. We can certainly connect you with Dr. St. if you are looking to connect with her. You all received my email this morning and yesterday as well, so please feel free to reach out to me and I'll make that connection there for you. I do want to again thank everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. I do also want to share that tomorrow night at 6 p.m. it is our Shine the Light press conference. It's our annual press conference to kick off Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Of course, we're doing that right now as we speak, and the details can be found on that second link that I shared. Again, thank you all so much for joining us for our Domestic Violence Awareness Month speaker series. A brief survey will be sent to you just to get your feedback and to learn how we can improve. Again, and our this presentation will be available on our YouTube channel as well. So we'll make sure all of that gets your way. So again, thank you so much, everyone. We'll wrap this up. Dr. St. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really grateful.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.